Yeah, here we are. Hello,
Right.
Mohawk College.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. So glad you could join us tonight. Before we get into the talk that we are here to present to you, I just want to say thank you to the Mohawk Student Association for having us today. And also, you might notice there's a little chat box underneath this little video, and highly recommend you pop into that chat box if you have any comments throughout the talk. We're going to be keeping our eye on it, and of course, any questions that you have, feel free. Don't wait till the end; just pop them on in there, and at the end,
Slide into those public DMs.
That's right. That's right.
Public direct
Slide
messaging,
right in.
right?
Yep. And then when we're at the end here, we'll take a little Q&A, and we can't wait to kind of chat with you all in the way that we can through the medium that we're on. All right, let's get right into it. Hello, everyone. I am Jeremy.
And my name is Brian.
And my name is Taylor.
And together, we are the producers and the co-hosts of Sickboy. We are super excited to be here with you today, and we're looking forward to sharing a few of the things that we've learned along the way in our little adventure of producing Sickboy over the last, it's been like 5 years now. It has been an adventure that has seen us through well over 300 conversations that have challenged the conventional practice of how we communicate as human beings. It happened by chance. We had no idea what the heck we were getting ourselves into, but fortunately we fell ass backwards into a passion that brings us here today, speaking with all of you through this teeny tiny little video screen.
That's right. But before we do that, before we dive into all of that, of which there is a lot, there's something that we have to acknowledge, and that is that it is Bell Let's Talk Day today. And it has become, rightfully so, a very important day in our country. It has become a unifying force that brings mental health to the forefront of every Canadian's mind. And we are so proud to be a part of that in bringing this show to you today.
That's right. Mental health is an integral part of what we do. We talk about it day in and day out. We learn from people who have struggled and people who have thrived while navigating their own mental health. We ourselves face challenges. I mean, if you've listened to our show, you've probably heard me talking about therapy a lot lately. It's pretty safe to say that we find comfort in knowing that through the work that we've done and the friendships that we are fortunate to have, that there's a community there to support us.
And as much as we support you, Brian, one thing, we talked about this before the show, we're going to promise that we don't make this a therapy session about you, just going forward. But maybe on the podcast tomorrow you can do that. But yes, like you said, building community is our mission. And as that community grows, we learn to thrive and to struggle together better when it comes to our mental health. Taylor, you look like you're giving the best mime impression I've ever seen. I've lost your audio. Yeah, your audio.
Is it back?
Oh, there it is. There you are.
Back now, yeah.
There he is.
Oh, okay, good. Technology figured out. We would be absolutely remiss if we did not also acknowledge the insanity that was 2020.
Oh, man.
It was a year like no other. And we want to recognize the incredible resilience of humans everywhere. The innovation that has come out of this period is nothing short of exceptional. We find ourselves nodding along in unsurprising agreement to things like this.
Yeah.
That looks totally reasonable.
Honestly, I kind of love it. I mean, as much as it looks like a baby stroller flipped upside down wearing a baby stroller, it's kind of cool.
It looks like Elon invented it for sure.
Yeah, it does look like
I think Musk is at the helm of this. And we are shaking our heads and laughing out loud at products like this.
This might look disgusting, but in these coronavirus times, beggars can't be choosers. An Israeli inventions and patenting company is touting this curious
don't do a
gadget
close
as the
up.
best way of keeping our masks on, while also
No matter how many
slow
times.
motion too.
No matter how many times we watch that, we never get used to it. It never gets dull.
That is harrowing.
It makes me sick to my stomach, you guys. I'm embarrassed that we included that. I think that something the viewers might actually find interesting is that we spent the first 4 years producing Sickboy being consciously averse to using things like this platform, like Zoom, like Google Hangouts, to conduct conversations for the podcast. And we thought this format would take away our capacity to access the authenticity and the vulnerability that we had come to expect while we were sitting down face to face with our guests, as if it would like sort of detract from the humanity of their stories. And let me tell you, boy, were we wrong.
Yeah.
COVID-19 forced us, like pretty much everybody, onto their computer screens and into virtual conferencing. And I know personally, guys, I feel sick to my stomach every time Apple sends me a screen time notification.
Oh no! Yeah, it really is. I mean, I just said the word harrowing earlier. That's what's harrowing.
Yeah, when you spend more time on your phone than you do sleeping.
Yeah.
I accidentally fell asleep with YouTube on, and I looked at my screen time the next morning, and I woke up at like 8 a.m. and it was like, you have been on the screen for 9 hours today already. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's justifiable now.
It
But
totally screwed your average
anyway.
for the rest of the week.
That's my excuse.
It's seeping in your brain. Whatever.
But
That's for another show.
We digress.
We
I guess
do.
when it comes to communicating over these digital platforms, the interesting thing that I think we realized is that as long as we stayed true to our values, we compromised almost nothing in our capacity to communicate. So it's things like innovation and adaptation that we've been able to continue to change the conversation. And if you guys didn't know, that's the title of this talk.
You
So
just said it. You said it in the
Put it
talk.
right in there.
I think a really good place for us to kind of like kick things off would be telling you, the audience, a bit of our origin story. So Brian, how do you remember things taking shape way back in 2015?
I guess I remember it started very organically. I had just moved home from living abroad, and we were getting together at a local library for these weekly creative meetings. And it was during one of those sessions that we were discussing some of our favorite podcasts when we had this sort of light bulb moment where we decided that we should start our own show. And Jer, I remember that you were actually sitting on this idea for a podcast where you wanted to talk to a doctor about cystic fibrosis and other illnesses. And if the viewers are thinking what I was thinking at that time, I was thinking it sounds super clinical and likely very, very boring. And I kid you not, I swear that would have been a real show. But Taylor and I, we wanted to be selfishly, we wanted to be involved, and we wanted the project to be fun and silly, something that we would listen to. So we suggested taking a more comedic approach, and that's basically when Sickboy was born.
Sickboy all began at the Halifax Central Library, and it started really as a joke. It was a free pass for two healthy people to ask all the questions that they would ever want to ask a sick person.
This might be the worst thing that I could possibly say in this moment.
Please say it.
Would you say that CF is the equivalent of like YOLO?
Oh my God.
No, but what I mean is, you said that
bro. It's so YOLO.
You know, you only live once. I've got CF.
Well, absolutely. As dumb as you phrase that question, you are absolutely right. When your friends don't want to go out and like have a good time, you know, you're feeling like you want to go have a few drinks, definitely pull out the, guys, I have CF and I'm going to die soon. And you're saying no.
It does speak to how comfortable a couple of friends can be with each other to like throw that out there. And me to know that you're joking.
But not really. Like I am joking, but not fully.
Man, I love watching that. I can't believe it's been 5 years since we recorded that first conversation. Taylor, I wanted to ask you, when you see that animation and you hear that audio, what comes up for you?
I remember recording that, and the same day, because obviously we were so excited, we went back to my apartment and we started to go through it and go through the editing process, which we knew nothing about how to do at all.
I still don't know.
Still don't. And we immediately realized that we were onto something that was pretty interesting. It was the first time that we had ever heard a laid back conversation surrounding illness that wasn't a total bummer. It was funny. It was educational. I learned more about JRCF in that hour than I had in the 5 years that we had been friends up until that point. And for those same reasons, it was inspirational. I remember that we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a fluke that we had this conversation. So we called up a great friend of ours, Matt Amiot, who had just recently gone through surgery to remove a brain tumor. And we wanted to get him into the studio and talk to him about anything and everything to do with his diagnosis, what it was like to get the news from the doctor, what the treatment looks like that he has to have. What was it like to tell his friends and his family that he has a tumor on his brain? And we left that conversation with Matt with no doubts in our mind whatsoever that what we were doing was no fluke. We left with an even deeper understanding of what it means to be sick. We laughed our asses off with Matt, and we left more inspired to keep having these same types of conversations with more people. And we wanted to do that as soon as we could. And we now know in hindsight that the conversation we had with Matt would lay the framework, would lay the groundwork for what we wanted every single episode of Sickboy to be like in the future.
Yeah. And, from that day forward, the ball just kept rolling. Since the inception of the podcast, we have produced and published over 300 episodes now. And we've dived into subjects such as cystic fibrosis, terminal cancer, PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, anxiety, Crohn's, lupus, endometriosis, death and grief. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And we have over 1,700 people right now on a list from all around the world who want to step up to the microphone and to share their story.
This might look disgusting, but in these coronavirus times, beggars can't be choosers.
That wasn't what I wanted to play.
Nope.
This was.
According to some of my gentleman friends, my odd-shaped mouth is like quite a fun and rewarding experience.
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite starts. This is great.
Yeah, this is all I know. But everyone has things that are challenging in their lives, and people try and hide those things. But it makes us all different. We're all different in this whole room. Embrace those things and let them sparkle.
We definitely forget, we're connected more than we understand. And the world would be a lot better off if we just tried to listen to other people's stories and what people are going through, even if it doesn't make sense to you. I think what you guys are doing is giving it that platform. So, thank you. Proud of you guys. Killing it.
Oh man, that video makes me like bawl every time. I love those people. When Tally's like, we're all different. We're all different in this room.
She's a pretty special.
So heartwarming. Yeah.
So here's the thing. We didn't think people were gonna give a shit about what we were creating. Again, we were just a few friends messing around with some recording equipment that, we didn't even know how to use. And again, it's been 5 years. We still don't know how any of it works. But very quickly, this thing started to turn into something that was much bigger than ourselves. And not only did the podcast take on a life of its own, but it began to teach us things that we never, ever saw coming. And to that note, I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about someone by the name of Andrew Henderson. Now, Andrew was living with lymphoblastic T-cell lymphoma. That is a mouthful, I know. He was given a very short amount of time to live out the rest of his life, and he was very aware of this. But before I tell you how he handled his death, let me first just paint a picture of who Andrew was. So when we met Andrew, it was in this this makeshift recording studio in a hotel room in downtown Toronto. And we get this knock on the door. So I go and I answer it, and I open the door, and I'm met with this fair-skinned, bright-eyed, boyish, slightly chubby man dressed in skin-tight leather pants and this big, voluptuous, lavish black fur vest. And he's got these beautiful, long, perfectly manicured ruby red fingernails. He's wearing an impressive amount of sparkly eyeshadow. And he's carrying a bottle of champagne that is literally the size of my torso. Okay? Needless to say, Andrew Henderson was absolutely fabulous. And so we waste no time. We get straight into the recording. And he's here to talk about his cancer journey.
I was going to say, what brings you to our hotel room today?
Well, these three boys messaged me on Grindr and invited me over. And I just figured, well, why not? I'm up for it. I was told I have terminal cancer. Why not? Live life, right?
Okay, so I'm assuming most of you know this, but if that went over your head, Grindr is an all-male gay dating app. So right then and there, we knew immediately that our senses of humor were going to mesh really well. And so it did. You know, for the next hour, we spoke and we laughed about every detail of Andrew's long and arduous battle with cancer. He chronicled the struggles of chemotherapy. He talked to us about the challenges that he faced with having to call all of his closest friends and his family members to tell them that he's dying. He dived so deep into the mental health struggles that came with having to uproot his entire life and move back to his hometown in Winnipeg from Toronto for treatment. And this sounds really heavy, right? But it wasn't. The conversation was so light. It was full of joy. It was chock full of inappropriate humor. And eventually, we get on to the topic of his ideal funeral.
What if you were to have your funeral tomorrow?
Yeah,
what would be the ideal situation?
So I want to be embalmed in a champagne bottle.
Oh my God, it's right here.
Champagne's my life force.
Yeah.
It is like... Yeah, so I was like literally talking to glass artists, being like, can you do a life-size, like a human-size champagne bottle?
Which wouldn't be that huge, because I think when you get... Oh, wait. Oh, my fuck. You said embalmed in a...
Yeah, like I want to be corpse.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
When you first said embalmed, I thought...
I pictured cremated.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, no.
Like, you're talking like...
My whole body.
Full ball.
Just like nude floating in champagne for the rest of existence.
Hold on.
Like
hold
a
on.
massive, like...
Did anybody go... Yeah, we can do that.
The people who did, I was like, you're the best people to have around. My family was like, that's not happening. And I was like, screw you guys. Like, this is my fucking death.
Well, if you believe it, when he died, that is exactly what he did. Andrew is forever floating naked in a bottle of champagne. No, I'm joking. He didn't do that. That would be really wild. But what he did do, actually, I think what he did end up doing was far more impressive than that. Andrew put together a performance art piece titled "Taking It to the Grave," and we unfortunately were unable to attend this this performance piece, this living funeral. But I want to take a moment to read to you an article that was written by someone who was actually there that night, along with some photos from the event. Erica, the hostess, enters and stands on a chair in white jeans and a sheer beaded top. She explains how the night will unfold. She leads us into the space where Glamdrew, this is Andrew's alter ego, lounges shirtless, dressed in white, wearing a glittering gold cat eye mask and makeup. He's spread out on a beige chaise crowned by a Tool champagne bottle topper, encircled by an altar of objects, candles, cloth roses, glittering tchotchkes, a Roman bust, a framed photo of Kim Kardashian. To his right, a shroud of green fabric ghosts dangle above floor pillows, inviting guests to relax and take cover. Dance music throbs through the speakers. There's gold everywhere. People crowd in, finding seats on the floor in the formal seating area in front of Glamdrew, hidden amongst the dangling green ghosts. The performance begins. Erica sweeps gold glitter inside a diamond demarcated by tape between Glamdrew and the audience. She invites us to join her. Behind her, Glamdrew waits for people to approach. They come forward one by one to say goodbye, chat, joke, and sob. Each audience member is invited to confide a regret or secret to Glamdrew. Then Glamdrew, the individual, and tattoo artist Carly Boyce will agree upon a symbol to represent the regret. Glamdrew then has these symbols tattooed on his body. Carly on one side with her stick and poke, the mourner on the other. Over the course of a few hours, I'm showered by glitter while friends dance together. I exchange words of comfort, make small talk at the manicure bar, dance and sing along to Madonna's Like a Prayer. Camera at the ready, I crouch inches away from family members saying goodbye. At one point, I take a break, crossing back into the other space for a drink of water. Alone and up against a wall, I do a handstand. I don't know why. As the performance draws to a close, Erica showers Glamdrew in champagne while he stands in a kiddie pool. Then she invites audience members forward to pour water over him. Three days later, Andrew died.
Andrew was our first guest who passed away, and it was the catalyst for a lot of introspection and reflection. We started to realize that Andrew was the human embodiment of exactly what Sickboy was striving to be. He was hilarious, he was inspiring, and I think most of all, he taught us how to accept our own mortality in the most beautiful and gracious way.
When I hear that story of Andrew, I think of him, obviously. And I also think of all the guests that we have been so fortunate to meet over the years and the courage that they have to step up and ask the world to hear their voices and hear their stories. I think about all the amazing things that we've been able to learn and have been gifted by our guests in being able to speak with them. Brian, if you had to pick one thing that you've taken away from this, like what we've done the past 5 years, what would it be?
You mentioned the word courage there, and I think for me it would definitely be having the courage to ask tough questions. I think when we first started recording with guests, I remember thinking that we needed to have someone on to talk about their experience living with mental illness. And it was probably right around the same time that Bell Let's Talk Day first started. It turned out that through a friend of a friend, we connected with a young woman who is living with bipolar 2 disorder. And, like now, the stigma surrounding mental illness was rife. I remember thinking to myself and kind of wondering, what would happen if we said the wrong thing? Like, could we be responsible for causing her to lose her mind, or could we trigger her to experience a manic episode or dive into a deep depression? And I think what was most important during that recording was that we stuck to sort of what we were doing in the conversations before that about physical illness, sort of what we knew best at the time. We came at that conversation with a sense of openness and authenticity and compassion. And when we got out on the other side, we learned an incredible amount from that conversation. But most of all, I think I realized that a lot of the fear that I had around this idea that we would say the wrong things was sort of based solely off of my own preconceived notions. I mean, we're all human, and from time to time, we're going to mess up. We're going to say the wrong things. But I think if you come at it from a place of genuine compassion, then those mistakes can be forgiven. And, I want to emphasize that this isn't easy, because even though this idea that, having the courage to ask tough questions is embedded in the work that we do on a daily basis, I still personally find it really difficult to apply it to my own life. Do you guys remember the time when I really struggled to talk to my mom about her cancer diagnosis?
Your mom had cancer? Nah, just joking. Dude, I got that clip right here. Erica, the hostess.
A lot of the conversations that we've had about your cancer have been really about like the physical procedure of it, but we haven't had any talks about the emotional challenge of dealing with it. So how have you felt?
Sad, sometimes, afraid. I think that if I'm afraid or I'm sad or I'm scared, then you will feel that as well. And I don't want you to feel that.
But do you think it's okay to be sad and afraid and scared of that? Because the reality is that it's an awful thing. If we would have had this conversation before and you said, hey, look, like there's gonna be some stuff that I go through and I just don't want you to see me dealing with that, but I have other people who are gonna be there and support me, then I just would have thought nothing of it and would have stayed away. But the other thing is that I just really wanted you to know that I'm here if you need me, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I love you.
I love you too.
Aww.
Oh, man. Wasn't that beautiful?
Yeah, I mean, there's something incredibly beautiful about, a son and a mother having like a really meaningful heart to heart there.
No, Jer, I'm talking about those luscious locks, that hair.
Yeah, we're a far cry from that
You
now.
son of a bitch. Take that hat off. I dare you to take that hat off right now.
Yeah, let's see what's happening now.
Oh no, he did it.
Someone
put that away. Put that away. Quick, put that away. Here, hold on. Hold on. Let me just.
An employee of ours today said that he looks like Dwight Schrute.
Guys, I'm channeling.
It's a live show. I can't rewind. I can't go back, Brian. I'm so sorry. I can't change it.
Oh, no. I'm channeling my inner Jonathan Taylor Thomas, guys. But seriously, I want to talk about that conversation with my mom, because it was probably one of the hardest conversations that I've ever had, but it was also one of the most important. And in taking that first step and having the courage to ask my mom those tough questions, it really created this space for so many more conversations like that to follow.
Yeah. What I also think is is vitally important about what we do and how we have these tough conversations is utilizing our affinity for humor. Our friendship is built around humor, laughter, and poking fun at each other. Usually a little skewed towards making fun of Brian. And we simply extend that. And we simply extend that to the people that we talk to, the people that we have on the show, our guests. Who would have thought that laughing about the experiences that people go through living with illness would strike such a chord with people, but it did. And it is the fundamental element of what we do that makes Sickboy, that makes the show grow bigger and better each and every day. When we get feedback from listeners, they often tell us how they feel like they've been brought into the fold, like they're a part of the friend group, like they're in the room with us. And that is exactly our intention. Come on and join the conversation, bend your ear and learn about the hardest and oftentimes the scariest moments of people's lives, but with a twist, with a twist of laughter. And to be very specific about that, laughter is the tool to get to the meat of the real stuff. We are not laughing at people with illness. We're finding humor in the experiences of what it's like to be sick so that we can transform an often shitty and heavy conversation into a fun, engaging, and inspiring one.
Yeah. It reminds me, what you just said right there just reminds me of the first time that we ever did a live recording in front of an audience. And it was with this gentleman named Craig, who has this like super rare undiagnosed disease that he's had his entire life. And, it's like, again, it's like that conversation we had with Andrew, where he's telling us these, and I'll say it again for the third time, harrowing experiences that sound heavy and sound awful. But I remember Craig had the entire crowd just like keeling over in stitches. Let me just see here. Oh, look at that. I have a clip of it right here. So it feels like a cramp.
Feels like a cramp
throughout your entire body.
My entire body. So when I got home that day, I was walking around like an old man in the house, and my mother and my aunt were at the house, and they were like, "Why are you exaggerating? It's just a cold in your muscles." That's where they always go to. It's just a cold in your muscles.
A cold in your
not a cold in my muscles.
Oh, hold on. What the fuck is a cold in your muscles?
I know. I have no idea. I was like, no, this is not normal. So
That's such a mom thing to say, right? A cold in your muscles.
You're fine. Just go sleep. And I was like, okay.
Take some echinacea.
Yeah.
I just want to take a second to appreciate how fucked up that must be, because like that feeling, like when you get that cramp, it is that like like make it stop now. Like it's panic.
It is.
Craig, what a gent, hey? What a beaut.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, Taylor or Brian, neither of you asked me what my biggest takeaway was since doing this for 5 years, so I guess I'll just chime in now.
Take it away.
Fine. Say what the thing that I learned was, which I will say, for me, I think the biggest point is, you touched on courage, you touched on laughter, very important. But I think I also think a really big part of this is vulnerability. This idea of changing the way we communicate, changing the way that we converse, especially when it comes to mental health, is allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Like for whatever reason, we as a society, and I will say this, like I don't want to gender this, but for sure, like especially we as men have been taught that vulnerability is the sign of weakness, which I think is total bullshit. I would argue the opposite. I would argue that it actually pays to be vulnerable. vulnerability, Brene Brown talks about this so eloquently, which I will not. But vulnerability is one of those essential elements for building a sense of trust with somebody else, right? So think about how it feels to to deeply, truly know someone that you love. You know their deepest secrets. You know their greatest fears. You know their most embarrassing moments. You know, these are the types of relationships that we deeply value in our lives. And so when we have a guest that comes into the studio or comes into this virtual space with us, they enter as a stranger, but after an hour of conversing, we leave that space as friends, because this person has chosen to put their trust in us and be vulnerable, and we have agreed to reciprocate within that exchange.
Mm. So bringing this completely full circle, what is the essence of our mission, of what we do, of what we're trying to do every day? What are the lessons that we've learned through hearing seemingly countless stories? Be courageous. Go on a limb.
Like a
Find levity. It really does make the difference. And be vulnerable, like Brian.
So vulnerable.
Thanks.
So vulnerable.
Like all
with
of
that
us.
haircut.
Which is
that haircut
commendable.
is vulnerable. For you to take that hat off and to show that to
That was all
of
three.
the
That was
students at
courageous.
Mohawk
That
College,
was that was courageous.
It was all
funny
three.
and vulnerable.
It was all
All
three.
together.
I'm unapologetically me, and that is what I hope people take away from this.
Yeah.
Don't stop being you, Bri. We have found that these three things they rise to the top when speaking to people about these like really hard, really challenging things that they're going through, be it a cancer diagnosis or, like a debilitating mental illness that they struggle with day in and day out. They are essential ingredients to open and honest communication. And communication is challenging. It's super, super challenging. Too many important conversations get cast to the side. We do this on some like super small scales, on stuff that really doesn't matter, all the way up to things that are life-changing. We cast these conversations to the side because our default is to categorize them as too hard. But what if we had the tools to make those conversations less daunting? What if our default was instead an understanding that the importance of those conversations outweighs their inherent challenge?
Yeah. I think our aim is to use laughter and comedy to access these conversations more easily, though, to find the courage we all have inside ourselves to ask those in our communities the questions that matter, and to access our own vulnerability, wielding it as the force that it is, allowing us to be authentically and unapologetically us, unapologetically me. I think that courage, laughter, and vulnerability get us closer to a more open and honest community. Guys, watch this. Catalyzing the change in conversation. I just did it again.
Wow.
That we envision in the world around us.
Yeah.
Great job, Brian.
And, on that note of community, I think it's really important for us to just take a second here to recognize the fact that, the thing I hate about this is that I can't see you. I can't see you, the viewer. And so, maybe one of you out there are new to the college. Maybe this is your first year. This is your first introduction into a brand new community, which can be a really daunting experience and a really scary experience. But here's the beautiful thing about that is that the MSA, the Mohawk Student Association, is designed for and led by students like yourself. And so their entire goal at Mohawk is to create a better place by providing high quality services, supports, and resources to help you, the student, succeed, whether that be academically or socially or hell, like mentally. And there are a number of really valuable student supports and health and wellness resources that exist at Mohawk. One of them being Empower Me, through student care, which is provided by the MSA. Mohawk College Counseling exists as well. There's also a mental wellness student support program called Keep Me Safe, specifically for international students. So if any of this speaks to you, we highly recommend that you take a moment to go check out the Mohawk Student Association website, which is www.mohawkstudents.ca. And I think I speak on behalf of all three of us when I say thank you for being a part of the conversation that we were having today, even though it was very one-sided. This is the start. This is where we need to be. This is all a part of, Bell Let's Talk. This is getting the conversations going. This is like, this is the inception to change the way that we literally converse with one another on a day-to-day basis, which is, I think, deep down, I feel very hopeful that we are seeing a change in the way that we talk about all things challenging, whether that be mental health, mental illness, physical illness, anything that we find hard in life. And it's just, it really is an honor to know that you're on the other side listening to conversations like this. So thank you very much. And hey, like I said at the very top, if you have questions, slide into the DM there on the bottom underneath us. Add your question there, and we can have a little Q&A. What do you want to say, Ted?
I want to say thank you to somebody who has left a comment in this comment thread. I want to say thank you to Emily, because she thinks we need a Netflix show. And I personally couldn't agree more. And I really shout that from the rooftops. Get those wheels turning.
What a great way to start off the Q&A, Taylor. Thank you so much.
I actually had the perfect segue into the Q&A, because Jerry, you were ending that by saying that you feel hopeful.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I feel hopeful. And if anybody else has questions, feel free to leave them in that comment section below. But Allison had a really great question that sort of touches on that idea. Allison asked, do you think the pandemic has helped take down the barriers between people and helping them to talk to each other more? And how can we make sure that that continues?
What a fucking great question.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't thought of that, but that is a really
great question. I haven't thought about that either, but you know what? I'm gonna just go out on a limb here and bang out an answer real quick, because what I immediately thought about when I heard that question was how being for, like, I'm going to speak for, I know not everyone had the same experience, but I feel like almost everyone had a similar experience in that there was at least a period of time which was longer than one might feel comfortable even like imagining, of being locked in your own home or your own room or your own space, whatever. And I think a lot of us went through that, right? And in that time, I remember I'm thinking back to, like, and I know that this is happening now for people in parts of Canada and through the US, but here in Atlantic Canada, the Atlantic Canada bubble has been really great. So things are a little bit different here now. But when I'm thinking about like 2020, April, May, around that time where we were like super full on lockdown, like at least for myself, it was like, I have CF, like I didn't go outside. Like I was like, maybe I'll take my dog for a walk. Maybe, like I'd rather just put him in the backyard. But in those moments, in those days when things were super fucked up and I was getting next to no physical contact or like physical sharing of space with people, I had never in my life felt more social in those moments, because it's like I was constantly, it's so funny because there's like this up and down. I was constantly in front of a screen with someone, you know, like I mean, how much has our relationship to FaceTime altered?
Yeah, totally.
Like before COVID, I never FaceTimed anyone. Now I'm like, oh, I got to call someone. Maybe I'll FaceTime them. You know, like, man, I just want to see them. I want to see their beautiful face, and I want to feel what I'm feeling with you guys right now. Like I although you're not here, I'm in my fucking kitchen. Like I feel right. I feel like if I could just put my arms around you guys, I would feel like I'm right here.
Yeah, we could like cheers.
Yeah.
Oh wait, this way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's also like it sort of devolved over time as we got as being in lockdown and being having restrictions, and the world of COVID sort of became more of the normal for people. But when it was like really fresh, like what happens in the environment of a lot of really serious things that affect a lot of people come together, and like the whole world had this sort of coming together, at least for a couple of months, that was really, really kind of special. And kind of just to speak to that question that you had specifically, Allison, I was thinking about how, because speaking over Zoom or whatever platform you're using, when you're not right in front of somebody, there are elements to that makes it easier to say something that might otherwise be just a little bit outside of your comfort zone of saying right in front of somebody when you're standing there. Like it's a different element, and it's hard to explain, but I think that
I can explain
that
it. It's the same. It's the same notion of having a conversation with someone, a professional conversation with someone, while not wearing any pants.
Right.
Guys, I'm wearing sweatpants.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you're wearing sweatpants. Do you think if we were at Mohawk College on the fucking stage talking to an entire auditorium of
I wouldn't be wearing sweatpants.
Of students that you'd be wearing sweatpants, a button-down shirt, and that hat?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised you even wore that. I'm surprised you even wore that online.
Guys, I'm unapologetically me. Okay. And I actually I just want to step in here too, because I actually have an answer for Allison as well. And I think that the thing that I think the pandemic has brought up, and I can speak to this from a work environment mental health focus, because I work for another company that specializes in mental health in the work environment.
This is not an ad for your job, Brian.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but we've seen an incredible uptake in people reaching out to businesses, reaching out to that are concerned about the mental health of their employees, and they're trying to put in place programs that will support them. I think there's more keynotes and things like this going on, but even from a personal standpoint, I started to go to therapy. I mentioned it during the talk, and I talk about it all the time now, but I started to go to therapy during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I've realized how incredibly beneficial that's been. But I've also seen people who have reached out to me who have asked about how to find the best ways to find a therapist, and with questions like that. So I think the thing that I hope continues on, or how we can make sure this continues on, is by continuing to support programs that are supporting people who are struggling. So whether that's professionally, whether that's events like this that MSA has put on, I think if we can continue to, again, continue these conversations and be open, this actually leads into another question that somebody just asked too. But if we can continue these conversations that are coming up because of COVID, after COVID, then I think that will that will help us sort of make a bigger leap, more so than we would have without COVID-19. That will benefit us as a net positive in the long term. So the other question that sort of came into was, how do we remove? So Mark wrote this question in. How do we remove the responsibility from those who are suffering to be more intentional of outreach, to let them know that we are here and can help? And I think that's really great question. Again, I can only speak to it from personal experience, but I just want to continue on for a second here, because I have a really close relationship with a friend of mine who struggles with complex PTSD. And at first I thought, oh, I host this podcast. Like, I have these conversations. I'm familiar with doing this. Like, as long as I let him know that I'm there for him, that'll be enough, and he'll reach out when he needs me. And I started to realize that in having conversations with him, that he would talk about these experiences that he had, where I was continuously saying, oh, well, why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you reach out? And he started to sort of educate me that in the moment he can't. Like, it's so debilitating that there's not that will allow him to do that. And so I realized that in terms of being intentional in my outreach, one, as a friend, I started to notice the sort of habits or behaviors that he would exhibit when he was having bad days. And when I would start to notice those things, I would and I will now reach out more often just to check in. And instead of just asking, how are you doing, I try to ask more questions that can't just be answered. I guess not yes and no questions. So, like, how are you doing? Good. Like, what's been on your mind lately? And, like, questions like that, that'll sort of lead to a more a more in-depth conversation that will sort of give him the space to open up more about his mental health. And I find that has helped a lot. But it's hard. It's hard to know when people are struggling, because oftentimes there aren't those signs too. So it helps when you know.
Kevin had a really great question here as well. What advice would you give someone who wants to share their feelings about something they are dealing with, but doesn't know how to start that conversation? And that stood out to me because we were working on some stuff a couple of years ago where we were trying to get to the heart of answering the question of, we know how we do this because we have a podcast that does it. And we get together and we we have people fill out forms and tell us their story. And then we get in touch with them and say, hey, well, come in and have this conversation now. Like, let's get on Zoom. And we have those conversations that way. And we were like, well, how do you do that when you don't have that process in place, like a podcast? And we thought about that and thought about it. And the answer kind of was like the exact same process without the microphones, the effort of scheduling it, I think a lot of people will think of trying to start a conversation when you're doing your regular thing with whoever that person is. Like, you're hanging out watching TV, you're going to whatever, the things that you do, and then you're just going to bring it up while you're doing that. And that's really tough, because then you're there under the pretense of like, hey, we're doing our regular thing, and now you are waiting for the right moment, which never comes.
There is no such thing.
To bring up this tough thing and to have this hard conversation. And so instead, it's like, when you set the ground rules, which is what we do with the podcast, is like, hey, you're going to come in, we're going to talk, we know what we're going to talk about, and you don't have to tell them exactly what you're going to talk about, because that would kind of defeat the purpose. But, giving like a heads up of, hey, like, I want to talk about something. It's tough to talk about, but I think it would be good. And I really like value you, or whatever your relationship entails, whatever the substance of that relationship is. And then getting that and setting that time, and then having that conversation, and having that conversation once will make not easy, but it'll make it easier every other time.
Yeah.
But it's also it's funny because it kind of sounds like a bit of an awkward thing to do too. Like reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, I want to set up a time to talk about something that's really challenging for me to talk about." Like that might be tough to do, but I guarantee you, once you do it and it starts, you're gonna feel so amazing that you
and that's
sort of
easier.
got over the first hurdle.
And reaching out to say that I want to talk about something tough is a lot easier than just cold turkey,
just inserting it in the middle of a session in Verdansk when you're trying to get the KD up. There was a little
Call of Duty talk. I mean, we don't need to go there. Neither here nor there.
We got one last one. We'll do this. We'll bang this one out real quick since we have 1 minute left. There's two questions. There's two questions here from Natasha. I'm guessing it's the same Natasha, and I'm guessing it's not my sister. Jeremy, how's your mom post-COVID? She's great. She just turned 60. We're gonna celebrate her 60th birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Mom! And she's not showing any weird symptoms, so she's doing good. And she just retired too this week. So congrats, Mom! You're killing it. Had COVID, got retired, and then turned 60. This is also from Natasha, and I'm curious to hear this from you guys. What is something you guys haven't covered on the podcast or in your work that you would like to tackle? I got one. I have one too. Yeah. What? Yeah. Do you have one, Tay?
You got the one that is sticking out to me is I think something that you said once. So I'm gonna wait till you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I think that it might be what you're. I think it might be what you're gonna say. So I'll just wait for you, and then I'll.
It's a weird one.
Aliens?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, go. Who's going?
No, you go, Brian. You go. We decided you go.
I was gonna say Stockholm syndrome.
Oh shit! That's what I was gonna say.
See, I knew that he was gonna.
Is that what you were gonna? Is that what you were gonna say?
All three of you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
was it all three of you looking at the
scam on Stockholm syndrome then?
Yeah, that's Stockholm syndrome. I mean, like, I just want to know. I think it'd be really interesting to do an episode on the psychology behind the psychology of cults, because like a lot of people get it wrong and think that only dumb people would join a cult, which is so not true. There's a lot of really gross and horrible psychology tactics that go into convincing someone to join a cult, and then.
And we're in those times now. Like that's happening on a broad. That's been happening on a broad scale now.
We're seeing it right now. But Stockholm syndrome is, although it's not the same, it's kind of in line where it's a psychological syndrome where someone who is the victim of a kidnapping starts to develop feelings of care and love for the perpetrator of the captor of the kidnapping. So
the interesting thing though that I think is important. So like I can go either the cult spectrum of that I think is really fascinating and would be like interesting to cover, but then also there's the element of what it means to be in an abusive relationship.
Very similar. Yeah, very. And
I think which
we've touched on the show a little bit. Like we've scratched the surface, but I think there's a lot more there. So, all right, this was, beyond enjoyable for us. I hope it was as good for you as it was for us, because we had a lot of fun. And so, MSA, thank you for having us. Students at Mohawk. As much as we would have loved to be there to hang out in your Arnie Hall or whatever that place is called, that would have been just the bee's knees. But of course, COVID has changed things, so maybe next year,
maybe in the future.
And hey, if you want to get more conversations like this, feel free to give us a follow. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter at Sickboy Podcast, but give the podcast a listen. And again, conversations all about the bizarre human experience of what we all go through, which is hardship, with a heavy lens on what it means to live life with illness. And we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your evening. Be safe. Have a wonderful upcoming weekend, and good luck with the rest of your semester. Thank you guys so much.